Hi, my name is Rajiv Karuwat, and I will be presenting my term project on passwordless authentication using WebAuthn for my CSEC 604 class. Why we need passwordless authentication? One of the main problems of passwords is where it requires that users remember complex passwords in order to get certain amount of security. So like we are putting the onus of security goes on the user side, which we know that we cannot expect a lot of normal everyday users to remember such complex passwords. Let's look at an overview of WebAuthn. WebAuthn in itself is a passwordless authentication protocol, which is designed to provide secure passwordless authentication by employing public key cryptography. So essentially, WebAuthn is trying to go away from passwords entirely by relying on strong, well battle tested public key cryptography techniques and ensuring that on the user side, there is very minimal requirement apart from keeping their security devices safe. And they have implemented the WebAuthn framework as a JavaScript API. So all browsers will be able to call browsers which support WebAuthn will be able to call the WebAuthn function calls using navigator.credential client to authenticator protocol 2. So CTAP2 acts as the conduit between the host, which is for example, the browser and the authenticator itself. So of now we will look at a FIDO2 compliant authenticator. So an authenticator can be defined as any device which is capable of executing PKI operations in a secure and isolated environment. Basically, the core requirement is it should be able to store the private key securely. It should be able to do operations like signing, key pair generation, and in an isolated environment which cannot be tampered from the outside. So if it provides such an environment, it can qualify as an authenticator. There are two types of authenticators: roaming authenticator and platform authenticator. WebAuthn interacts with the authenticator through CTAP2, like I said earlier, and the underlying transport, like the actual interaction with the device, can happen over USB, NFC or near field communications, Bluetooth, BLE, that is Bluetooth Low Energy, and this is in case of roaming authenticators. Platform authenticators, on the other hand, are WebAuthn interacts with them using the device specific bindings. So now next, let's look at how WebAuthn works. So the protocol itself has two main components: the registration ceremony, which is what we will use to register users, and the assertion ceremony or the authentication ceremony, which is how we will log in users to it. So let's first look at the registration ceremony. So the registration ceremony begins by the client requesting the server, or the relying party. In this case, the correct nomenclature for the server is the relying party, for a specific challenge and certain information like what sort of public key algorithms do you support, etc., that kind of stuff. So server responds with a challenge. Now this challenge is usually a cryptographically secure random pseudo random generated number of bytes. So any OS level implementation can generate these bytes for you, and the server will also respond with what all public key algorithms it supports. And there are others parameters also which is too in depth for this presentation, but it's there as part of the spec. Now once the client receives this information, it needs to because this is JSON, and because all this is happening over HTTP, we need to convert this from a JSON embedded um, uh, format to bytes, array bytes of JavaScript. So the client does all this conversion and it sends it to the authenticator. Now the sending to the authenticator occurs over the CTAP2 protocol. That is this two that we see over here. And the client formats it in a certain way which the client authenticator expects, which the spec has already defined. The authenticator will take this information and it will generate a new key pair. It will generate attestation, which we will see later, and it will also do user verification. User verification is basically if the server requires that the user enter some sort of pin or have some sort of knowledge which can prove the provenance of the authenticator, that the user owns the authenticator. the server can request this in form of user verification. So if the user verification flag is set to true, then the client or the person who is executing the ceremony will have to enter a PIN or a biometric login like thumbprint. Or in case of Apple, even Touch ID is a valid user verification, is a valid supported user verification endpoint. So the authenticator generates all this key pair and it returns this data back to the client. The client again receives it in form of byte arrays. Now we cannot send byte arrays directly to a server over the HTTP protocol, so we need to convert it to base 64, and this is converted to base 64 and it is sent back to the relying party. Now, the relying party can validate this information. First of all, it needs to validate the challenge, whether the challenge was not it matches the original challenge that they sent as part of the initial request. So this ensures that this mitigates replay attacks where like someone can try to intercept the request in between and try to spoof a form of or initial request. And this data is then decoded at the client side, and if all the verifications pass, the client will save this as the public key associated with the user. So let's look at some of the parameters here. It has multiple, two main things that we are that we need to focus on is the challenge and the supported public key algorithm. So here, if you see it, it supports algorithm -7, -257, -37. So these are basically INA naming conventions for public key algorithms. -7 means ECDSA with SHA-256. So that is elliptic key cryptography digital signature algorithm with SHA-256 hashing. Then let's look at the authentication ceremony or the login ceremony. It's quite similar to the registration ceremony. We request, we specify that this is the user we need to log in as, that is the 0. Then the server responds with a challenge, and it also responds with a certain with the credential ID of the public key that it saved earlier. So the authenticator knows, okay, this is the credential ID with which they have to sign, and this is passed is in a similar fashion as the registration ceremony. This is passed to the authenticator, and this is sent back to the client, and the client will again modify, convert the byte arrays to base 64 and send it back to the server. One key difference is the signature. So the signature here is the core part of the PKI aspect. So because the authenticator only has the private key, they can use a private key to generate a signature, which can be verified at the uh, server to basically confirm non-repudiation that the the authenticator owns the private key for this particular public key that we had saved earlier. So this is essentially where the passwordless login aspect comes into play, because we are using those public keys, public and private keys to verify ownership. We do not need any passwords. Rest of the data is essentially to do some additional verifications, whether with the to increase the security, whether the parameters that we sent were matches whatever the authenticator is responding with, whether it hasn't been tampered in transit or not. So this is how the server response, the initial server response requires looks. So it responds with, okay, this is the credential ID that is saved in the server, and the underlying transport that it supports, like we saw USB, BLE, NFC, and also it gives a challenge. And the authenticator responds with this. It is a similar data structure as we saw in the registration format, but the only difference is it also gives a signature that can be verified on the server side. So building a FIDO2 compliant authenticator. So for this, I'm using Google's OpenSK framework, which can be used to build a TalkOS application. TalkOS uh, is an embedded OS framework, which basically emulates USB HID protocol. And inside that, we have Google has implemented all the security algorithms that can be compiled, and it can be flashed into this Nordic NRF 52840 dongle chip. Again, the code for all this is on my GitHub. The links are here. So if you want to check these out, the instructions to set it up locally on our development environment is also present as a readme.md file on the GitHub repository. So let's look at a demonstration here of the login flow of the registration and login flow. So here I am giving a username and I would be entering that. Also a display name can also be given. This is not strictly necessary, but username is what we need. We click on register. So if you see here, it initially asks me to log in using my fingerprint. That is this. So this is Windows Hello, which is the platform authenticator that I talked about. So this is default behavior that it tries to log in using the platform authenticator first. But on the server side, you have the options to tell the user not to do the platform authentication, just do the the roaming authenticator. So here I'm canceling that. So it is switching over to roaming authenticator and it asks me to enter. So this is the user verification part where it is asking me to enter the security key pin. So now I'm entering the security pin and it asks me to touch, that is verify my presence. This is known as user presence and I'm touching it. So that verifies it. So if you see, it gives the response here. So here, if you see the signature counter, it is 0. So that means this is because this is an initial registration, it returns the 0. This is the public key. This is a credential ID which is needed. Again, like all this information is saved on the server side. And the best thing about public key cryptography is even if all this information is leaked, if it gets breached, the user security is in no way compromised. As long as the private key on the authenticator remains safe, the user is completely secure. So now we attempt login. So here we are attempting to log in using the same username. Also knows it needs to use the roaming authenticator. That's why it automatically goes to the authenticator and it asks me to verify my user presence by touching the button. And as you can see, the verification is successful and it returns, as you can see here now, the signature counter has increased to 100. So now due to because these modules are a bit expensive to procure, I could get only one to test. So in order to test the scenario of a failed login, I'm going to go to the server backend and edit the database value to reflect a different security key, public key, basically emulating the fact that this user Rajiv KR was logged in using a different username, so using a different public key, initially registered using a different public key. So now if I were to try to log in again, it would fail. The authentication would reject. It would ask me to verify. And after I give the response, it says assertion failed. So this is because the signatures won't match anymore because the public key which is saved on the server side is different, which means it was logged in using a different authenticator. So I tested this across multiple devices and browsers. I got very significant improvements in login times compared to username password based logins, as you can see here. The attempt failed on IE11. This is because IE11 is now deprecated and the WebAuthn protocol is not supported in IE11 anymore, and it also failed on Safari Mobile on iPad OS. But this is actually not due to a fault of the protocol. This is because the dongle that I was using was not compatible with the iPad. So if there were a USB authenticator which connects via USB-C directly, it would work fine with the iPad OS as well. There are four main areas of future work that can be implemented. TPM attestation, that is allowing the transfer platform module on the host device to be used as an authenticator. Account lockout handling, that is what if your USB or your any authenticator is lost. Privacy improvements, that is how can we avoid that username that we initially put, which could be a privacy concern for certain users, and implementing the BLE transport for the authenticator that we built to allow it to be used as a wireless authenticator. So in summary, basically WebAuthn provides a secure and seamless authentication flow without any passwords and is privacy focused. And with as more and more users start getting these devices or the platform authenticators get more robust, the WebAuthn protocol will see more widespread adoption. In fact, there are production-ready implementations on major companies as well. Right now, Microsoft is a classic example which allows you to log in using your Windows Hello platform, which is again WebAuthn. Uh, we can expect significant reduction in authentication attacks through techniques like phishing because there is no password involved and your device is the only authentication parameter that you would have to use. Thank you.